What's up, everyone? It's Tom from Three Simple Men. I just want to take a moment to wish everyone a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and hopefully you get something good from Santa. Now, on to the episode. What's up, YouTube? We're Three Simple Men making the way through the galaxy. My name's Tom. With me is Ryan and Mike, and we are still in the Acolyte, episode 6 slash teach slash corrupt.
I guess the discussion is, what it's all about your perspective, right? Which I think might even be a quote from this episode. It's semantics, I think is the actual word that's used. Um, One thing I like about this episode, just on our own end, is I do feel like, um, at least my notes, this kind of takes us back to our format in some of our earlier episodes. I feel like there's a lot of new stuff in this episode, um, that I'm excited to talk about. Um, but yeah, I mean, we start off with OSHA. Well, last episode ended with OSHA and May switching places, whether they knew it or not. And we start off with OSHA waking up on the unnamed island on an unnamed planet.
It
That
looked like it
so
looked like that. What was that planet? Octo from the sequels.
Yeah, the director came out and said it's not Acto, it's a resemblance to it. So that was deliberately done on purpose.
Yeah, different species too. No port. Then that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. We get the introduction to a new species.
Yep.
We have I had to look up their names because they're not named in it, but Skura, which are scurrying around this island. They kind of look like ducks or with like anteater heads. Um,
Yeah, like they had like an elephant trunk or
yeah,
something.
like an elephant, like a little trunk, or like, yeah. So we do get that, which is kind of fun, always to see a new species. And this is their first appearance. They've never appeared in Star Wars before, as far as I'm aware. So that's always fun. Um, and then we very quickly realize that our boy Basil is his nose knows. He smells something's off, and he's scurrying around the ship. I did like, as you guys know, I always watch with the subtitles just to get more information. I did like every time we saw him this episode, a specific like some music, the same music played, and it was just described as mischievous music, which I thought was funny. Um, yeah, but there's a lot in this episode. Again, a lot of build up. I feel like we do get a lot of fun stuff from the stranger. But we do get a lot of him wanting to teach OSHA what he had attempted to teach May.
He's bringing out all the. Hi guys, well, I see you, bud. He's bringing out all the means of the dark side: pain, loss, fear, anger, aggression, just to bring it out. And he's slowly planting the seed in OSHA, trying to bring out the anger, because that's, oh, I forgot what the Sith code is, but it ends with, through my, like something with like, through my strength my chains are broken or I'm free. So he's trying to implement that, whatever the Jedi taught you isn't the only means of using the Force.
Yeah, I mean, and I like kind of, I feel like I didn't really catch it the first time, but I definitely caught it watching it the second time. What he talks about, um, when she's like, you killed George, you killed, and he points out, like, you love these people and they can't love you back because of their religion, because they're Jedi. And it's kind of interesting. Like, yeah, she has that higher capacity. Like, she loves them. And like, even he's like, and Jackie, like, where did you think that relationship was gonna go? Like, so he points that out to her, which is interesting. And it is kind of it shows like, well, that's a very not Jedi trait, right?
It's
We
a,
know, as far as we know, the only Jedi that have loved have fallen to the dark side, right? Love is not something that they're supposed to believe in, and really his whole argument is just this
Don't
Jedi is just a hokey religion that like you don't need to follow, and there are these rules that they want you to follow, and I just don't want to follow them, and that's kind of his whole thing.
I think he was trying to explain that though your compassion, your love for them, but it's never going to be fully reciprocated. It's going to be limited because of they're bound to this code, like this idea like you can have compassion but you cannot love. I mean, and that's when a lot of people start throwing it out like, well, compassion is love. So why can't you love if you care for living beings? And which is starting to, I think that's what he's trying to do in a sense of trying to call out some major flaw in the Jedi way, into the light side. Where it's just like what he's doing is trying to be free,
Yeah.
Mhm.
away from any rules to be to show his full potential, to be non-bound or restricted through whatever means of laws that the Jedi have.
Yeah, and like to your guys' points too, like he was definitely calling her out, and like anytime she was trying to talk to him, like she was talking as if she was the Jedi, and it's like, and he was like, "No, you're not." Like, and you were really getting to the bottom of it. Well, why'd you leave the Jedi, or where's your lightsaber if you left the Order? So like, he definitely brought that out when she ignited his lightsaber on him. So yeah, you're right. He's definitely planting the seed, but then one of the things that she was saying is like, well, if you leave the Jedi, your strength of the Force fades. And he's like, yeah, that's total BS. And then you guys point out the Sith code of like fear, anger, loss, and desire. So he's definitely planting the seed, and again, I think that's why it's called teach or corrupt. It depends on your point of view.
Well, and I wanna hop right onto the buzzword you just said, planting the seed, and shift directions a little bit. We
Mhm.
get this discussion with brief discussion between Venestra and a senator, where the senator is kind of informing her, hey, there's another senator that's looking to open up like like a hearing and an inquiry and wants to look into the Jedi. And he says, I know that the Jedi have always been um
Transparent.
transparent with us. And then she ends the conversation as Mog comes in, the world's most awkward Jedi. Mog comes in and and continues to have a discussion about what's going on with Soul and his party, which she's not being transparent about. And then that leads to them saying, well, okay, we have a transmission, but it got cut off. And again, we get Soul transmitting and not being very transparent. He doesn't give a lot of information. He just says like everyone's dead, but he doesn't say who did it. He doesn't say anything else. It's just, very vague. And then that gives Venestra and the rest of the Jedi that show up kind of the the decision when they find these dead bodies is like, well, if it wasn't these flying moth things that killed them, it's all lightsaber wounds. Who did it? And Mog's like, wow, why would Master Soul do this? And it's almost like this little seeds being planted of, is Soul just doing this? And the information hasn't gotten back yet. nobody knows about this Sith, and that's exactly what the I think the earlier complaints when I think I mentioned this last episode too, when Mundy, people were like, oh, you know, he can't be in this. He wouldn't know. He would. How would he be in this and know about the Sith? He doesn't know yet. They don't know anything. This hasn't been reported back. Vanestra's been keeping it quiet, and Soul hasn't been forthcoming with the information. So it's just a very interesting kind of, you know, dynamic of the point of view and what's actually being seen and what everyone's aware of and who's aware of what.
I think
Yeah.
that she said was someone who's trying to tip the scales.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
we,
like, you know, she knows because Soul told her what was going on, but that was in private. So it's just kind of like we gotta get they gotta catch up, they gotta get this information. Um,
Mhm.
but it's just very interesting that, you know, there seems to still be this need for secrecy. Like, why aren't you informing the Jedi Council? Why isn't more of this happening? It's just all very still being quiet. Well, we know why, because they're concerned that the Senate is, you know, going to use it against them, but
Mhm.
definitely shady stuff happening with the Jedi right now.
Yeah, I would have to admit it's pretty cool. Like it seemed like there were force echoes they were able to sense. So like you heard like the
That was,
callbacks to like OSHA run, like some of the sabers clashing and yeah, I mean just the callback to like what we saw with like the Jedi Fallen Order game or Ahsoka. Um, but that was pretty cool.
I think
yes.
the meaning towards like the way the Jedi are acting now, it's because of now how everything has changed or all the events that's transpired. The level of complacency that they've had for probably I don't know how long is probably left them. I don't want to say weak, but like I said, complacent. I'm trying to think of another word, but either or, it's like the minute things happen, it's like quicksand. They're panicking. They're like trying to fix this. They're trying to fix that, and it's like they can't get anything. Can't get a full grasp or understanding of it, and
Mhm.
who knows what's going to happen because I think like I said, they've been complacent for so long. Now it's like someone was something like this was bound to happen. You just thought otherwise.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, and right, this is the High Republic. Is that this is the
Something
time
like
frame of
that.
this?
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
Republic, you know, they're in good times, right? It sounds like their only enemy is within. It's just them arguing politically, holding on to power. There doesn't seem to be this, you know, external force that's, I shouldn't use the word force, but this external, you know, threat. So that's why the first thought is like, oh, someone's fallen, like something from within. And, you know, we have senators fighting about this, and there's no other discussion or even the thought process like, oh, the Sith are back. Like that's not even the first thing that comes to mind. Because they just don't, that's just not what they're experiencing now, you know?
They're
And
just
that leads to why it's, you know, when Darth Maul gets introduced, it's kind of like, what was this? Was he a Sith? Was he the leader? You know, those questions come up. So I think it's fun seeing this. I want to shift again to the technology in this episode. Uh, Obviously, we see Pip again, but this time we see him get reset to factory settings by May, and I thought it was funny that to reset him to factory settings, which I don't think we've ever heard that term in Star Wars, you had to hold the two buttons. She held two buttons at the same time. Very you know, iPhone-y.
I, yeah, I was about to say it's like something like an iPhone. Yeah,
But
it's
it did make me think of some more justification, and I feel like all I'm doing is combating trolls. But I know there were complaints about how, and you notice it in this episode too, how large and clunky the lightsabers look. Like they just the hilts are just bigger. And I know that, and we know because I believe we discussed it, that the reason they were larger was because the in filming they actually wanted the light from the lightsabers to light up the actors without having to do CGI. So they're actually practical lightsabers without cutting people, obviously. But they're practical lightsabers, so there's full on, you know, electronics in those hilts, and they actually functioned and lit up, and that's what they were using as opposed to the old metal dowels with CGI lightsabers, which I think is awesome. But my other thought process is, well, technology, at least in our world, tends to, or at least it used to, go from being big to getting smaller. Like originally, like cell phones were big and then they got smaller. I
Oh,
would say like these are old lightsabers, so these lightsabers are bigger, and then in the future they just get smaller because the technology gets a little better and they figure out how to handle the kyber crystal in a smaller vessel. That's just my kind of
I was gonna compare it to
canon.
the TVs back then, the big TVs with the fat back and
Yeah, yeah.
flat
So it
screen.
gets better. So that's why they're larger back in the High Republic. That it makes sense. And frankly, we haven't seen anything before this time. So who's to
I like to think of it as like lightsabers back then in the high times were basic and simple, but they were still part of that idea of an elegant weapon. Then as time went on, it's like more of the Jedi possibly could have been like you're free to create your own style.
Well, we can't say they're basic and simple after being introduced to Venestra's lightsaber. That was crazy. It's a whip.
Yep. Purple whip too, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't look like a whip to me, but I won't say anything else. But
Wait, really? You didn't see?
oh no, I did. I'm just comparing it to something else, but
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah. But
uh,
that's very interesting.
yeah, I mean, and I don't know about you, but I made a connection watching this episode with the whip and the discussion that OSHA and the stranger were having. His wounds. My thought is that lightsaber is what caused those wounds.
Yeah. I kind of
They looked because they didn't look like, they looked to me like whip marks.
yeah, that was my impression too. Just like, well, because I think also too they were promoting that lightsaber, and then just like, all right, yeah. So Finestra,
It seemed very deliberate to like show that lightsaber afterwards. So that was my thought. I don't know, Tom, if you picked up on that, but definitely watching it a second time too. I'm like, yeah, he talks about how his master
threw him away. Yeah.
threw him away, and she was like, "Were you stabbed in the back?" And then the next scene, we see this whip of a lightsaber to kill the flying moth. I mean, which we really didn't need to see a flying moth die again. We already saw that, so really it was just to I think that was purposeful to point out, like, hey, look at this weapon; it's very similar. So
I think it was just nice of a call out because I think again with the High Republic being like first introduced through novelizations, I think she might have been one of the characters in that novelization. So I think there's just like a also an Easter egg to all those.
gotcha. I also caught another Easter egg. I don't know if you guys caught this, but I caught it the first time I watched it, and I'm really excited to have seen it again the second time. So I knew it was coming, but before they leave, the rescue party leaves, Vanestra's talking to Mog, and behind her and behind them, sitting at like a council or like some sort of like desk, there's a guy in the background, and it is a Selkath, is the species, and it's the species from the cover of the Knights of the Old Republic game. You guys remember the cover of the game has a character on it that's not in the game? So if you look up Knights, oh, you guys don't know this? All right, so look up Knights of the Old Republic.
Is it like the blue like whale or something like that with like
Yes, yeah. If you look up the Knights of the Old Republic game, there is a guy, an alien, right in the cover holding a gun. Looks like he's going to be the main character of the game, and he never shows up in the game. Oh, if you hold it in front of you, yeah,
It's because of the screen, yeah.
yeah,
I was like, you're holding up something invisible, sir.
yeah. But one of that species is in this, which is fun to see, and I definitely think it is a reference to that, because for me it's just really funny, and always was, that there was this character, and I remember playing Knights of the Old Republic for the first time, and like beating it and then being like, did I not unlock a character? Like, did I miss the character? I'm like, I'm so confused because I thought like that was the character you're supposed to play as just because he's so prominent on the box and then he's just not in the game at all. So kind of a
Because I
fun
know I completed it on the light side. I don't know if you go to the dark side, maybe you uncover him, but who knows?
I've done research since and he's not in the game.
Well, that's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, it was just some art direction. They threw him on there, and I don't know if they were supposed to switch him or something, but they never did. But that's it's a fun little Easter egg. If you look at if you have the game Knights of the Old Republic, look at the cover art, and you're gonna clearly. I mean, he's Mike. You just looked. He's very prominent, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's
Yeah.
just like he's just there, and you know, um, not a character.
Yep, I know. Yep, that's exactly who I was. Yeah, that's true. You don't really unlock them. That's
Yeah, so it was cool. It was cool to see again. Cool to see him in the back or that species in the background. Lets me know that I'm sure the creator of this series was definitely a fan of Knights of the Old Republic, or at least somebody involved was. And I think I remember hearing that the director had wanted to do a Knights of the Old Republic movie or something too. Um, I don't know that'll happen now that the Acolyte's been canceled. Hopefully it comes back. Just again, I think we do get some really awesome characters in this show, and I would love to see how the story continues. What else do we get? Did we mention the Power of Two? Because we do get the reference to the Power of Two.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, we didn't really get to that, like, but I think we gotta really talk. Like, I wanted to talk about Soul for a quick second because I'm like, for a moment there, I'm like, is this dude not really using the Force to sense that that's not Osha? I'm like, is this dude really that naive? And then, luckily enough, he's just like stuns May, and it's just like, I was like, thank God. I'm like,
I think it took him some time. I don't think he figured it out. I think Basil told him.
Well, would he understand? I thought like he didn't understand Basil's language. I thought it was like
Oh.
when May asked, like, "Are you gonna?" or asking about Brendock, like, "Are you gonna tell the truth about what happened?" Then he was like, "Oh crap." He's
Yeah. So he did figure it out, but I think Tom that his force was his use of the connection to the force was a little disrupted, a little blinded by unfortunately I think his rage and his distract like he just
yeah, he nearly
everybody just got killed. I think he was just so and we even saw in the last episode the strength he almost killed like he really got the rage. He really brought his anger forward. So I think that probably was just clouding his judgment and just had him completely
I
just
mean,
not even focused.
we've seen it before with Maul when he kills Qui-Gon, and you see Obi-Wan, just the way he fights is, it went from like he's fighting with his master till now he just watched his master get killed. He's fast paced and he's aggressive.
Yeah.
It's really, I think it's a way like the Stranger slash the Sith find a way to get the best of the Jedi because it's like trying to break that whole idea is like there's no love or compassion, but yet you kill all these Jedi that sooner or later you're gonna break.
yeah, I mean, not to mention he wasn't even like conforming to the code, and yeah, it's just it was, and just the way he got into their heads too, just like, and you saw like Soul was questioning himself. Well, how can I have not sensed him um on either Kofor or wherever Master Torben was? Um, yeah, he just was he was really upset with himself, and I mean, yeah, I mean, you could see that May wasn't ready to hug Soul when he said, "Oh, he saved me," and I mean, yeah, I mean, it did take him a while, but yeah, I just think his emotions got the better of him, and it just took him some time. And then once the whole Brendock thing came out, it was like, oh, wait a minute, like, and then he says like, yeah, I've waited 16 years for this moment, and I'm gonna tell you the truth. Um, so yeah, I think we'll see what he tells her.
Yeah.
I got well. I see you, bud.
All right.
His cameo.
Good boy.
Anything else about this episode, or
Uh, I think. Well, we gotta talk about that helmet that he's repairing. His helmet he's repairing.
right? And he gives us more information on it. I think I mentioned the cortosis last episode, but I think it's finally mentioned my name here, so I kind of jumped the gun on that a little bit. I apologize. But yeah, so we learned that it's cortosis. We learned that it, besides disrupting the lightsaber beam, it also is sensory deprivation, like the old training helmets that we've seen. So yeah, it's kind of cool. He says, you know, you don't, nothing comes in there with you. It's just whatever you bring or whatever. Nothing else matters. It's whatever you bring inside. Kind of reminds me of, you know, way into the future, Luke going into the cave. It's like, you know, what you bring in there is what's there. So similar in that sense. So yeah, we're gonna see, um, I guess what OSHA sees. And I did like the helmet on and the breathing as I think a little homage to Darth Vader. Especially the continuing of the breaths after the credits, which we see in a couple other things, which is always a fun trope. I do think the helmet's awesome. I don't know. What do you, I mean,
Yeah.
I've always liked it. I like the style of it.
I think it's cooler than Kylo Ren's.
Are we talking Kylo Ren from like the first one, or when he repairs it with the red marks?
That one right there was the one I was pointing at. But yeah, I mean the red mark's kind of cool, kind of similar in that sense. But I think, I don't know, something about that, like
Silver
that
teeth.
the teeth jaw thing, I think is awesome.
It's
Still,
very.
I still think Darth Vader's is cooler.
Mhm.
I got Darth Vader everywhere. Where this is very difficult to do because it's the opposite. There he is.
I got that one right
There's
there.
his Pez. Spot the Darth Vaders. You do got the boba. I got boba too, right there. I don't know. I think it's a really cool helmet.
Yeah, it's definitely intimidating, and yeah, just having those two uses of disrupting the lightsaber and the sensory deprivation, it's pretty cool helmet.
I'm kind of bummed right now that another reason I'm bummed that the Acolyte did as poorly as it did and got canceled. I I was kind of hoping to just see a whole lot of that helmet on Halloween. I thought that would have been an awesome character to see people walking around in, but who knows? Might still happen.
Yeah.
Have some faith. We'd mentioned before we started recording, but there is like a change.org out to try to save the Acolyte and let them do their season 2.
There's also, we talked about it before recording, there's also the one to keep it canceled, and there's one that's to decanonize it.
Yeah, again, I think that's just the same trolls that like it's tough. Well, again, we can't really have this full conversation with you, Tom, yet because we haven't watched the whole thing. So
Yeah.
I don't want to fully get into it because we will spoil things. But let's put a pin on that and maybe have a discussion with that once we finish up the Acolyte, our last episode on that, and
But
we can talk about
two-
our own opinions. Like, you know, do you want a season 2 or do you want it decanonized? That could be a good conversation to have.
Yeah, that's definitely a conversation worth having at the end, because we only got what, 2 episodes left after this? Yeah, so.
Yeah.
We'll just pin up, like you said, we'll put a pin on it, and then that discussion will naturally come.
All right. Well, with that, Mike.
The wrap. Thank you everyone for joining Three Simple Men making their way through the galaxy. Hit that like, comment, subscribe, and come back next week for some more Acolyte content. May the force be with you, always.